Imagine fighting for your child, and then your child stands up and fights for you. That's exactly what happened in this courtroom, and what he said next changed everything. Your Honor, the voice was small but firm. Everyone turned their heads at the same time, like someone had just shouted fire. But it wasn't a lawyer speaking. It wasn't even one of the attorneys standing at the bench. It was a boy. 8-year-old Malik Henderson stood there, barely tall enough to see over the table, clutching a scuffed brown briefcase in both hands. The leather looked older than him, edges worn, handle loose, like it had been used for years. He placed it on the table, opened it slowly, and then looked the judge straight in the eye. "I'm my mom's lawyer," he said. For a moment, no one spoke. It was the kind of silence that feels like it might snap in half. Then came the first sound, a short laugh from somewhere in the back row. The kind of laugh people let out when they think something's cute. But Malik didn't even flinch. His small fingers gripped the edge of the table, and his eyes stayed locked on the judge. "I'm serious," he added, his voice louder this time. Judge Franklin blinked, clearly unsure what to do with this. The man had probably seen hundreds of cases in his career, but this, a child claiming to be a lawyer, that wasn't in any courtroom handbook. "Son," the judge said finally, leaning forward just a little, "where's your attorney?" Malik shook his head. "We don't need one. I've got everything I need right here." He tapped the old briefcase in front of him. "I've been studying for weeks, and I have proof." Whispers started buzzing through the courtroom now. Reporters who had come expecting a routine custody hearing suddenly leaned forward in their seats. Sharon Henderson, Malik's mom, sat frozen in the chair next to him, her hands clenched together so tight her knuckles looked white. "Malik," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Malik said without looking at her. His jaw was set in a way no 8-year-olds should be. "I'm not letting them take me away from you." A low gasp ran through the room, and suddenly the smiles faded. This wasn't a game. Judge Franklin cleared his throat. "Young man," he said slowly, "this isn't how the law works. You can't just walk in here and represent someone." Malik opened his briefcase and started pulling out papers, neatly stacked sheets filled with handwriting, highlighted notes, and what looked like copies of legal documents. He even had a small blue book tucked in the corner, The Basics of Family Law, written in bold letters across the front. "I read the rules," Malik said calmly, "and I know the truth about what's going on. Things nobody else has said yet." The judge's eyebrows rose. Even the opposing attorney, slick suit, silver tie, the type who looked like he spent more time in golf clubs than courtrooms, paused and looked down at the boy like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or get worried. And Sharon? She was shaking her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes. She had walked into this courthouse ready for another fight she thought she was going to lose. But now, sitting next to her son, she realized something had changed. Something big. But no one in that room, not the judge, not the lawyers, not even Sharon, knew just how big that change was about to be. Before that moment in court, Malik Henderson was just another kid from Toledo, Ohio, with messy braids, a quick smile, and a love for basketball and comic books. On most days, you would find him in the driveway after school, bouncing a worn-out Spalding ball on cracked pavement while humming whatever tune he'd heard on the radio that morning. But if you asked anyone who really knew him, his teachers, his neighbors, his mom, they'd all tell you the same thing. Malik was different. Not in the way kids sometimes get labeled because they're quiet or shy. No, Malik was sharp, observant. He saw things, remembered things, asked questions most adults couldn't even answer. The kind of kid who could take apart a broken toaster just to see how the wires worked, and then, somehow, put it back together so it worked better than before. That's Malik. And the person who knew him best was Sharon Henderson, his mom. 33 years old, 2 jobs, barely any sleep most nights, and still showing up to every school play and parent-teacher conference. Life hadn't been easy on her, not by a long shot. But Sharon had one rule she never broke. Malik came first. They lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. Nothing fancy, just enough. Malik's room had posters of superheroes taped to the walls, a secondhand desk with pencil marks scratched deep into the wood, and a stack of library books piled on the nightstand. Half of those books weren't even for kids his age. Titles like Understanding Your Rights and Family Law Basics sat next to comic books like Black Panther and Spider-Man. "Baby, why are you reading that stuff?" Sharon had asked one night, walking into his room with a plate of chicken nuggets and fries after her late shift. Malik looked up from the book, his face serious. "Because they said they're going to take me away from you." The plate nearly slipped from her hands. It had started 6 months ago, with one phone call that changed everything. Sharon's ex-husband's family, people who had barely been around when Malik was born, suddenly decided they wanted custody. They claimed Sharon wasn't providing Malik with the stable environment he needed. Never mind the fact that she had been the one raising him, feeding him, loving him every single day of his life. "Malik, don't worry about that," she had said, forcing a smile as she set the food down. "Grown folks' business, okay? You just be a kid." But Malik didn't forget. Kids never forget. Instead, he started listening to everything. Conversations Sharon had on the phone, words thrown around in the lawyer's office. He asked questions, wrote things down, even started checking out books from the library after school. One day, Sharon walked in and found him at the kitchen table with papers spread out everywhere, his little hands gripping a pen like it was a sword. "What are you doing?" she laughed, trying to make sense of the mess. "Getting ready," he said without looking up, "in case they try to lie." Sharon thought he was just playing pretend, a kid's way of coping with stress, so she let him have his lawyer practice. Never in a million years did she think he'd actually try to use it, but here they were. In that courtroom, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, Malik was standing taller than he ever had before. And Sharon? She felt her heart twist in her chest as she looked at her little boy, her baby, trying to protect her like he was the parent. She wanted to grab him, pull him close, tell him he didn't need to fight this battle. But the truth? Deep down, she knew why he was doing it. Malik wasn't just smart, he was brave. Brave in a way that broke her and made her proud all at once. Still, bravery was one thing, court was another, and Sharon had no idea that her son was about to turn this whole case upside down. But what none of them realized, especially the lawyer on the other side, was that Malik had been paying attention to something everyone else had missed. For Sharon Henderson, the word court had always meant trouble. Not because she'd ever been in trouble, she hadn't, but because courtrooms weren't built for people like her. People who worked overnight shifts, stocking shelves at the grocery store, and then cleaned houses during the day to make ends meet. People who didn't have money for expensive lawyers or time to sit in an office going over case files. Yet here she was, dressed in her best outfit, pressed slacks, a cream blouse that had seen better days, and shoes that pinched her toes, sitting on a hard wooden bench waiting for her case to be called. Every minute felt like an hour. Every breath felt heavy. She glanced at Malik, sitting beside her with his legs swinging off the edge of the bench, briefcase clutched like it was made of gold. His small face was calm, almost too calm. "You okay, baby?" she whispered, brushing a hand over his shoulder. He nodded. "Yeah. Are you?" She tried to smile, but her chest tightened. She wasn't okay. She was terrified. This fight, this whole thing, had started the moment Sharon's ex-husband, Darius, decided to pull a move no one saw coming. He hadn't been around for years. Not for Malik's first day of school, not for birthdays, not for anything. But then, suddenly, his family came forward claiming Malik was being neglected and deserved better. The nerve of them. What they didn't mention was that Sharon had been raising Malik alone since he was 2. She'd been the one putting food on the table, clothes on his back, and love in his life. All Darius had done was leave. And now, his mother, Malik's grandmother, was sitting across the aisle in the courtroom with her expensive lawyer, a man named Charles Denton. Sharon had Googled him the night before. Denton wasn't just a lawyer. He was the kind of lawyer who bragged about winning the unwinnable cases. The kind Sharon could never afford. She tightened her grip on her purse as she remembered that first meeting with her court-appointed attorney weeks ago. A woman with kind eyes who seemed nice enough, but who also had 10 other cases to juggle. Sharon could tell from the start, this wasn't going to be an even fight. "Ms. Henderson," the attorney had said, flipping through her thin file, "we'll do everything we can, but custody cases like this, they can be unpredictable." Unpredictable. That was a polite way of saying, don't get your hopes up. Sharon had walked out of that office feeling like the walls were closing in. She'd cried in the car for almost an hour before she could even turn the key in the ignition. Because what was she supposed to do? How do you fight people with more money, more power, more everything? That night, she made Malik his favorite dinner, mac and cheese with extra cheese the way he liked it, and tried to hide the tears in her eyes as they ate. "You okay, Mom?" he'd asked between bites. "I'm fine, baby," she lied. But Malik wasn't fooled. He never was. It was after that night that things started to change. She noticed him reading more, asking questions like, "What does custody mean?" And "What happens if the judge thinks you're not a good mom?" Questions that made her heart ache. She tried to brush it off, telling him, "Don't worry about that. Everything's going to be okay." But deep down, she didn't know if it would be. And now here they were, in this cold, echoing courtroom, with the odds stacked against them. The bailiff called their case. Sharon stood, smoothing her blouse with shaking hands. She walked to the table, Malik right behind her like a shadow. She expected him to sit quietly, maybe draw in the notebook he brought, but instead he did the unthinkable. He walked right past her, placed the briefcase on the table, and spoke words that made the whole courtroom stop breathing. "I'm my mom's lawyer." But what Malik said next, that was the moment everything started to shift. You could feel it, the shift in the room, the kind that turns murmurs into silence. Every pair of eyes was now on Malik, this little boy in a plain blue button-up shirt, standing so straight you'd think he practiced that pose in the mirror. Judge Franklin adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Young man," he said carefully, "you can't represent your mother. You need a law degree for that." Malik didn't blink. "I know I can't be her official lawyer," he said, voice steady, "but I can tell the truth. And I have the right to speak if it's about me. That's what the law says, right?" The judge paused. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Technically, Malik wasn't wrong. Minors in custody cases do have the right to be heard, but rarely, if ever, like this. From the other side of the courtroom, Charles Denton chuckled softly and shook his head like he'd seen it all before. He leaned down toward Sharon's ex-mother-in-law and whispered something that made her smirk. Malik noticed. He turned to Denton and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why are you laughing? You're supposed to care about what's best for me, right?" The smirk on Denton's face faded. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Denton," he said, "let the boy finish his thought." Malik pulled a folder from his briefcase and laid it on the table. The papers were slightly crooked, the handwriting on some pages messy, but his small hands handled them like they were the most important documents in the world. "First," Malik began, flipping to a page with notes highlighted in bright yellow, "they said my mom doesn't give me a stable home. That's not true. We've lived in the same apartment for 5 years. My school is 5 blocks away. I have friends there, teachers who know me. I even made honor roll last semester." He looked up at the judge. "Isn't that stability?" The courtroom stayed silent. Denton finally spoke. His voice was smooth, the kind that could charm a jury in 5 minutes. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. The boy's testimony shouldn't—" "Why not?" Malik cut in. His voice rose a little, and for the first time there was heat behind it. "You talk about what's best for me, but you don't even know me. You don't know what I like, or how my mom works 2 jobs so I can have what I need. You don't know that she stays up late helping me with homework even when she's tired. You don't know that she never misses my games. You don't know any of that." His words hung in the air like heavy smoke. Sharon pressed her hand to her mouth, tears threatening to spill. The judge held up a hand toward Denton. "Mr. Denton, I'll allow him to speak, for now." Malik nodded like he'd just won round 1. He pulled out another paper, this one with a photo stapled to the corner. "Also," he said, his voice softening, "they said my mom doesn't feed me right. But that's not true either. Here's the receipt from last week when she bought groceries. Fresh stuff. Vegetables. The kind that costs more, but she still buys them." He slid the paper forward, his small hand shaking just slightly now. Judge Franklin studied the photo and the receipt. His expression didn't change, but his eyes lingered a little longer than before. And Malik wasn't done. "I read the law," he continued. "It says the court has to look at what's in the best interest of the child. That means me, right? So why isn't anyone asking what I want? Why do grown-ups always think they know better without even asking?" The judge sat back, silent. Even Denton didn't have a quick comeback for that one. The courtroom felt different now. The whispers were gone. The smirks were gone. All that was left was a quiet tension, because this little boy had just called out the whole system in front of everyone. But no one had any idea that Malik wasn't just speaking from the heart. He had something else, something that would make this case explode wide open. The quiet in that room was heavy now, thicker than the cold air swirling from the vents. Malik didn't notice. He was too focused. His small hands rummaged inside the briefcase until he pulled out an envelope sealed with a single piece of tape. "Your Honor," he said, stepping forward, "I have something else." Judge Franklin raised an eyebrow. "What is that, son?" Malik's fingers trembled just slightly as he opened the envelope and slid out a photo. It wasn't big, just a printed picture on regular paper, but when he placed it on the table, even Denton leaned closer to see. "This," Malik began, his voice sharp now, "is my dad." The judge frowned. "Go on." Malik tapped the photo with his finger. "They said they want me to live with his family because they think that's better for me. But nobody asked why he hasn't been around. Nobody asked why he didn't come to see me. Even one time." Denton cleared his throat, trying to interject. "Your Honor." "No," Malik snapped, his voice slicing through the air like glass. "He doesn't come because he's not allowed to. He's on probation. I found the papers." Gasps filled the room. Sharon's head jerked toward Malik so fast her earrings swung. "Malik," she whispered, panic flashing across her face. But Malik kept going. "He got arrested 2 years ago. That's why he can't come around. And guess what? His mom..." He turned and pointed straight at the woman sitting across the aisle, his grandmother, "knew about it. But she still told everyone he'd be here for me." The judge stiffened. "Do you have proof of this claim?" Malik nodded and pulled out another sheet of paper from the folder, crumpled at the edges but legible. He walked it to the bailiff with both hands, who brought it up to the bench. Judge Franklin read silently. His lips tightened, then parted slightly as his eyes scanned the page. He looked back down at Malik, his expression unreadable. "This is a probation report," the judge said slowly, "from Lucas County, dated 18 months ago." Sharon's heart pounded in her chest like a drum. How did Malik get that? How did her 8-year-old even know what a probation report was? Denton was on his feet now, his voice slick but nervous. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant. The father's legal troubles have nothing to do with whether his family can provide a better home." Malik spun on him like a storm. "It has everything to do with it. If they're lying about him being here for me, what else are they lying about? They're saying my mom's not stable, but at least she tells the truth." His little fists were balled up tight now. His voice shook, but not from fear, from anger. The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Denton, sit down, now." Denton froze, jaw clenched, and reluctantly sank back into his seat. Malik took a breath, then continued softer this time. "I don't care about money or big houses or fancy cars. I care about love. My mom gives me that every single day. They don't. And if this court is supposed to do what's best for me, then that's all that should matter." For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Sharon felt tears slide down her cheeks, warm against her skin. She reached for Malik's hand under the table and squeezed it tight, like if she let go, the whole world might spin away. Judge Franklin finally leaned forward. His voice was calm, but there was weight in it now. "Malik, thank you for speaking honestly today." He looked toward Denton, then at Sharon, then back at Malik. "I need a moment to review this new information. Court will recess for 15 minutes. He banged the gavel. The sound echoed like thunder. Sharon exhaled hard, realizing she'd been holding her breath the entire time. She turned to Malik, grabbing his small face in her hands. "Baby, where did you even find that?" Malik looked at her, eyes wide but steady. "You said grown folks' business wasn't for me, but Mom..." He swallowed hard. "They were trying to take me away. I couldn't let that happen." Her throat closed up. She pulled him into her arms and held him like the world was ending, because for her, it almost had. But neither of them knew. This fight wasn't over yet. Because after the recess, the judge was coming back with a decision that would shock them all, and what he said next would change everything. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. Sharon sat on the hard bench, her hands gripping Malik's like a lifeline. Across the aisle, the grandmother whispered furiously to Denton, her face red, her jaw tight. Every now and then, she shot a glare so sharp it could cut glass. Malik sat calmly, legs swinging again, as if he hadn't just thrown the entire courtroom into chaos. He held the empty envelope in his lap, staring at the crease in the paper like it held answers. Sharon studied his face, those big brown eyes, the little scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike. He was still just a kid, her kid, and yet today, he'd carried himself like a man. The door creaked open. Everyone stood as Judge Franklin walked back to the bench, his black robe flowing behind him like a shadow. His face was unreadable, no hint of what he was about to say. The bailiff called, "All rise," and then, "You may be seated." Sharon's stomach twisted. This was it. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. His voice was firm but calm. Before the recess, this court heard statements from the minor in question, as well as reviewed new documentation submitted for consideration. I have weighed the facts, the testimony, and most importantly, what is in the best interest of the child. The grandmother leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. Denton straightened his tie like he was preparing for a win. Sharon braced herself, clutching Malik's hands so tight he winced slightly. Judge Franklin looked directly at Malik. "Young man, your words today were thoughtful, honest, and deeply moving. It is rare that a child speaks in such a manner, and I want you to know, this court heard you." Malik nodded slowly, not saying a word. The judge turned his attention back to the courtroom. "In light of the evidence provided and the inconsistencies I have observed from the petitioning party, I am ruling in favor of Sharon Henderson retaining full custody of her son." For a split second, there was silence. And then, Sharon gasped so loud it broke through the hush. Her hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. She pulled Malik into her arms so fast, so tight, like she would never let go. Across the aisle, the grandmother's face collapsed into disbelief. Denton tried to mask his frustration, but the twitch in his jaw gave him away. The judge raised a hand to settle the murmurs. "Furthermore," he continued, "any future petitions for custody will require substantial proof of stability and honesty. This court will not entertain further misrepresentation." His eyes swept toward the other side of the room, and the message was clear: don't try this again. He banged the gavel once. "Court is adjourned." The sound echoed, final and absolute. Sharon sank to her knees right there in front of the table, arms still wrapped around Malik. Her body shook with sobs she had been holding in for months. Malik hugged her back, small hands pressing against her shoulders. "I told you," he whispered, his voice soft but sure. "I wasn't gonna let them take me." She pulled back just enough to look at him, her vision blurry with tears. "Baby, you saved me." Malik shook his head. "No, you saved me every day. I just did what you do." Sharon laughed through her tears, hugging him again so hard he squeaked, "I love you, Malik." "I love you too, Mom." Around them, people were still buzzing, some smiling, some shaking their heads in disbelief. A few even clapped quietly as they walked out. But Sharon didn't notice any of that. All she saw was her son, her miracle. As they stepped out of the courtroom into the cool Ohio air, Sharon bent down and kissed the top of Malik's head. "You know," she said with a watery smile, "you might actually be a lawyer one day." Malik grinned, clutching his old briefcase like a trophy. "Maybe. But first, can we get some ice cream?" She laughed, a real full laugh this time. "You earned it, baby. You earned it." But as they walked down those courthouse steps, Sharon realized something. This fight wasn't just about custody. It was about love. About how far you'd go for the person who means everything to you. And today, love won. They left the courthouse that day as more than just a mother and son. They walked out as a team, proof that love and determination can stand against anything, even a system that feels impossible to fight. What Malik did wasn't about showing off or trying to be a hero. It was about something deeper, something every child deserves, a voice. He stood up when most adults would have backed down. He fought for his family with nothing but truth, courage, and a worn-out briefcase filled with handwritten notes. And what did we all learn from this? That strength doesn't always come from power or money or titles. Sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the smallest one. Sometimes, it's an 8-year-old who refuses to give up on the person who never gave up on him. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. When you fight for what's right, when you stand for love, you can change everything. Because life isn't fair. We all know that. Courts, jobs, the world, it's all tilted sometimes. But if Malik taught us anything, it's that persistence and truth matter. Love matters. And when those two come together, even the biggest battles can be won. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Malik's shoes? Would you have had the courage to speak up? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, even a little, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories that matter, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like these remind us, no matter how small you feel, your voice can be powerful. Stay strong, stay true, and always, always fight for the people you love.